They say some places are untouched by time, where old trees whisper secrets and shadows move when you're not looking. For Enzo, a 22-year-old from the city, this village was exactly that. After years of studying and working abroad, he returned to the Philippines, hoping to reconnect with his roots. His grandmother had fallen ill, and with no other family around, it was time for him to visit the town where his mother was born, a small, isolated village in the heart of Visayas. The road was narrow, no signal, no streetlights, and no sounds but the occasional chirp of insects and creaking bamboo. When Enzo finally arrived, it felt like he had stepped into another world. The people were kind, but reserved. Old women stared at him with wide eyes, whispering in hushed tones. Children peeked from behind nipa huts. Even the dogs didn't bark. They just watched. That night, over a simple meal of rice and fish, Enzo's grandmother gave him a warning. Don't go out after dark, especially not near the forest. He laughed, thinking it was just one of those old folk tales meant to scare children. But her eyes didn't laugh. They looked terrified. And so Enzo lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of the wooden hut. The silence was so deep, he could hear the thudding of his own heart. Outside, the wind began to howl. Somewhere far in the distance, a faint song floated through the trees, a woman's voice, software sad, calling. He thought it must be his imagination, but it was only the beginning. Enzo barely slept. That voice, soft, mournful, impossible to place, echoed in his thoughts long after it faded. It didn't sound like a dream. It sounded real. He told himself it was just the exhaustion of travel, or the eerie atmosphere of the countryside playing tricks on him. Morning came, with a thick mist draped over the village like a shroud. The sun tried its best to pierce through, but the light felt pale, sickly. At breakfast, his grandmother sat silently chewing her dried fish, her eyes darting toward the window every few seconds. Enzo tried to ask her about the forest, about the voice, but she only said, "There are things in this place that wear faces, but they are not human." That cryptic warning did little to ease Enzo's mind. Later that day, he wandered the village. Children followed him from a distance, giggling but never too close. An old man with one cloudy eye stopped him near the well. "You are the son of Lorna, yes?" he rasped. Enzo nodded. "Your mother saw it too. She ran from it. But some of us can't run." Before Enzo could ask anything, the man simply walked away. By afternoon, Enzo's curiosity got the better of him. Despite the warnings, he approached the edge of the forest. The trees there were thick and old, twisted in unnatural ways. The air felt heavier, cooler, and something inside him warned not to go further. But as he turned to leave, he saw her, a woman, standing just beyond the tree line. She wore a white dress that moved as though underwater, even though the wind was still. Her hair was long, black, falling over her face, but her posture was graceful, calm, almost angelic. She didn't speak, but tilted her head slightly, beckoning him. "Miss?" Enzo called out. "Are you okay?" No answer. Just that eerie humming, the same tune from the night before. Against all reason, Enzo stepped into the forest, one step, then another. As he approached, the woman turned slowly and began to walk deeper into the woods. Enzo followed. It was like sleepwalking. He didn't feel fear, just a strange pull, like gravity drawing him in. He couldn't tell how long he had been walking when everything changed. The sky above grew darker, though the sun hadn't yet set. The trees began to creak and moan. The woman stopped beside a giant ancient belate tree, her back still to him. The air had grown icy. Enzo's breath came out in visible puffs, and then, without turning her body, she turned her head, not just to the side, but completely around, a full 180 degrees. Her eyes locked onto his, black, endless. Her smile stretched far too wide, almost tearing at the corners. Enzo's legs froze. She began to speak, not in words, but in a voice inside his mind. You came because you heard me. You see because you were meant to. Then she stepped backward and vanished into the tree, as though she had never been there. Enzo stumbled back, breathing hard. He ran, branches cutting at his arms and face, until he burst out of the woods, heart pounding, eyes wild. The villagers saw him and turned away. Some crossed themselves. No one asked what happened. Only his grandmother stood at the door, her eyes wet with fear. You saw her, she whispered, the divine Aswang. She has chosen to reveal herself to you. That night, Enzo couldn't speak. He sat in silence, hands trembling. Her voice didn't shake. It wasn't surprise she wore on her face. It was grief and acceptance. Enzo looked up. What? What was that? That woman? That thing? His grandmother took a deep breath, and then she began to tell him the truth. She is not just an Aswang. She is older, stronger, divine. She explained that in their province, legends of the divine Aswang went back hundreds of years. Unlike the flesh-eating monsters from horror stories, this entity was something more ancient, something spiritual. She didn't just prey on the body. She chose her victims for their souls. She doesn't appear to everyone, the old woman whispered, only to those with her blood in their veins. Enzo's mouth went dry. Her blood? What are you saying? His grandmother looked at him with eyes full of sorrow. Your great-grandmother, my mother. She made a pact. Decades ago, during the Japanese occupation, food was scarce, and survival came with a price. Enzo's great-grandmother, Rosa, was desperate. One night she entered the forest and never returned the same. From that night on, her family never starved. Crops grew out of season. Illness passed them by. But something was taken in return. She made a deal, and the divine Aswang marked our bloodline. The pact was simple, his grandmother explained. Protection and prosperity, in exchange for one chosen descendant, every third generation. Enzo's heart sank. And I'm the third. His grandmother nodded slowly. She's waited for you, Enzo, since the day you were born. Suddenly, it all made sense. The dreams he'd had as a child, the way he never got sick, the odd way animals stared at him. It wasn't chance, it was inheritance. But there was more. You can still escape her, his grandmother said, but only if you learn what she truly wants, only if you face her, willingly. Enzo wanted to scream, to cry, but inside, something was stirring, a flicker of something beyond fear, a need to know. He stood, fists clenched. Then I'll go back, I'll find her, and I'll end this. His grandmother's eyes widened in horror. No, Enzo, you don't understand. You don't go to end it. You go to become it. A loud boom of thunder struck outside. The power went out. The flame of the lamp extinguished with a hiss. And in the darkness came the humming again. That same soft, haunting melody. Only this time, it was inside the house. The humming echoed through the room. Not from outside, not from a distance, but from within the house itself. Enzo froze. His grandmother grabbed a worn wooden crucifix from the wall and began to pray, lips trembling now as she whispered in Old Bisaya, a dialect she rarely used, one handed down through the bloodline, full of prayers older than Christianity. She's already inside, his grandmother gasped. She's been waiting. Enzo scanned the room, heart pounding. His eyes landed on the family altar. The candle had gone out. Enzo dropped to his knees. The weight of it all crushed him. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The world darkened. The whispers became voices, children crying, men screaming, women chanting. "I want you to choose," the Aswang said. "Become what you are destined to be, or sever the line forever." Enzo suddenly felt something cold at his feet, a pool of black water rising from the ground. From within it, two paths emerged. One glowed red, fire, hunger, and power. The other was gray, cold, empty, and silent. "One will awaken your inheritance," she said. "The other will leave you human." He turned around, but the forest, the voices, even the path he entered through, were gone. Only the choice remained. Enzo reached for the red path, then stopped. Something pulsed in his chest. The pouch. He opened it and removed the tiny bones inside. Their feet no longer touched the ground. "We were chosen," they said in unison, "not cursed." Then came the image of a woman with wings. Her body split from the waist, floating in midair. Her eyes bled light. It was her, the divine Aswang. But she looked sad. "I gave them power," she whispered, "because men gave them pain." Enzo watched as villagers burned a woman alive. She was accused of witchcraft, of healing, of being too powerful. And so the divine Aswang came in ancient times to offer freedom, in the form of hunger, yes, but also in choice. "They became monsters," she said, "because no one protected them." The vision shifted. Now Enzo saw himself, but not as he was. He was floating, his skin darkened with ancient ink, his eyes golden like hers. He heard a child scream, and without hesitation, he protected the child from a horde of angry men. "You are not her heir," a voice said. "You are her balance." Back to the world, Enzo woke, gasping, on the riverbank. The sky was no longer black. It was glowing red. From the distance, smoke, villagers screaming. He turned to Aling Payang, who stood unmoving. "She's testing you," the Babaylan said. "She has come to claim your village and your soul." Enzo's grandmother ran toward them. "Enzo, the church is burning. The people are running." He stood. He no longer felt like the same person. "Then it's time," he said. "Time to end the story, or write a new one." The final teaching. Before he could leave, Aling Payang pressed her palm to his forehead and whispered a final spell. "The power in you is not evil. It is wild. Learn to ride it, or it will ride you." She handed him a necklace made of red string and obsidian. "This will remind you, you are still human, for now." Enzo nodded. As he walked down the mountain, fire in the distance lighting the sky, he whispered under his breath, "I am not her weapon. I am not her son. I am the last of my line, and I choose what comes next." The flames kissed the night sky. As Enzo descended the mountain path, the red glow of his village burned brighter than any sunrise. Ash fell like snow. The church bell tolled once, then shattered with a sound that echoed through the trees. He ran. His feet blistered, but the pain grounded him. He was no longer just a young man running toward danger. He was a blood-marked sentinel, the last of his kind, and tonight, the divine Aswang had come to collect. A village in ruins. When Enzo reached the outskirts, the scene was chaos. Huts smoldered, chickens scattered, smoke clouded the stars. Villagers screamed as shadowy figures skittered through the air. Half-formed Aswangs, awakened from bloodlines that had slept for generations. His cousin, Malloy, was crawling from a collapsed house, her face scratched, her eyes wide with terror. "Enzo, she's here. She's inside the church, waiting." Enzo helped her up and handed her the obsidian necklace from Aling Payang. "Wear this. It will protect your mind." She looked at him, confused, but there was no time. The church's secret. The old stone church stood barely intact, its cross now tilted sideways. Enzo approached with cautious steps. Every shadow twitched. He entered. Inside, the pews were overturned. Candles had melted into red rivers. At the altar stood her, the divine Aswang. She was no longer veiled in moonlight and elegance. Now, she was in her true form. Long fangs, black wings spread across the altar, her hair floating like a serpent's. Her eyes locked on him with a mother's patience. "You came," she said, voice gentle but echoing. "Good. The blood has accepted you." Enzo clenched his fists. "This ends tonight. You won't consume this village. You won't consume me." The Aswang floated toward him, unbothered. "Consume you?" she chuckled. "Child, you are not prey. You are my mirror. You carry the soul of Dama Iskra, the only one who ever refused me. The forgotten founder." She waved her hand, and the altar cracked open. Beneath it, a skeleton buried in chains, wrapped in rosaries and feathers. "Your great-great-grandmother." She rejected the gift. She tried to seal me using faith and blood, and failed. Enzo staggered back. He saw a carved name, Iskra Dalise. "She cursed her own descendants," the Aswang whispered. "Tried to bind our bond, but now you've unsealed it." Enzo looked down at his hands, veins glowing faintly gold, his skin heating, his teeth aching. He was changing. "You want me to become like you?" The divine Aswang landed before him. "I want you to become better." Fire and fang. Suddenly, a burst of smoke behind them. From the door, the priest, Father Ador, clutching a blade forged from silver and Sampagita stems. "You don't belong in God's house," he yelled. The Aswang paused. "You've awakened it, the true gift." The choice Enzo now hovered above the ground, his heartbeat syncing with a rhythm he didn't understand, until he did. The heartbeat of the land, of the Aswangs who resisted, of ancient protectors wrongly named monsters. "I see it now," he whispered. "You were never evil, just exiled." The divine Aswang stepped back. "Then choose, Enzo. Stay human and let this world rot, or become what I am and rebuild it, wild and free." The flames around them flickered. The villagers gathered outside, silent, watching. Enzo closed his eyes. Memories flooded him. His mother's lullabies, his father's funeral, the scent of Uba ice cream in the market, his grandmother's prayers, his cousin's scream, and one image, his ancestor, Dama Iskra, standing with a blade in one hand and a child in the other, protecting both from light and dark. Enzo's decision. He opened his eyes. "I will not become you. I will not destroy you, but I will replace you." The divine Aswang hissed, but smiled, then bowed. "Then let the old gods weep. The last generation has chosen." She turned to ash, willingly, and the church sighed, as if releasing a breath it had held for centuries. The light faded, and Enzo collapsed. The morning after, the village stood still at sunrise. The Aswangs who had half-turned reverted to normal. No one remembered what happened, only fragments of dreams and fear. But Enzo remembered everything. He stood alone at the church steps, the gold in his eyes now dim, but still glowing beneath the surface. "I am neither man nor monster," he whispered. "I am the watcher in between, the keeper of balance, and I am the last of the blood." The morning sun cut through the mist like a blade. Smoke no longer rose from the village, but a strange silence lingered, as though the world itself was waiting to exhale. Enzo stood alone at the edge of the forest, barefoot, the soil still warm beneath his feet from last night's battle. The ash of the divine Aswang had long scattered with the wind, but her final words clung to him like a second skin. "Then let the old gods weep. the last generation has chosen. He hadn't just survived. He had been chosen, or cursed, or maybe both. The village awakens. Back in the village, confusion ruled. Children clung to their mothers, wondering why they had nightmares of flying women with burning eyes. The elders spoke of a fever dream, a divine warning. Some whispered that the church had been desecrated, that something unnatural had passed through the holy place. Only a few remembered clearly: Malloy, Father Ador, and a blind herbalist named Lolo Idro, who hadn't spoken a full sentence in years. When Enzo returned, mud-streaked and sleepless, the people stared at him not with gratitude, but fear. He walked into the fire and came back alone, someone muttered. "He carries her spirit now," said another. Enzo ignored them. He wasn't there for approval. The old writings. That evening, Enzo and Malloy visited the church ruins again. Beneath the broken altar, past the crypt where Dama Iskra had been bound in chains, they uncovered a leather-bound scroll, untouched by the fire. Its ink shimmered faintly. Ang Tipan ng Bantas, the covenant of balance. Inside, Enzo read of a time before colonizers, before churches, before even the word Aswang. A time when guardians of the land walked among humans, their blood tied to nature, the moon, and memory. They were not monsters. They were Bantas, the balancers. Some protected, some destroyed, but all served a single law. Life must be whole, not ruled by fear, nor by fire. Enzo looked up at Malloy. This is what she meant. She wasn't trying to curse me. She was preparing me. Malloy swallowed hard. Then you're not a savior. You're something older than that. Whispers in the tree's word spread quickly. Some villagers left the next day, saying they couldn't live beside a man who had the blood of the old gods. Others stayed, but prayed twice as hard. A local shaman, Mang Diego, confronted Enzo near the sacred tree. "You've opened a door that should have stayed sealed. There are things older than Aswangs watching now. You think you carry balance, but balance attracts chaos." That night, Enzo woke to find an owl perched on his window, staring with human eyes. It spoke without sound. "The others have noticed you. A storm is coming down by the riverbank." The water had begun to pull back, not in tide, but as if afraid. The mangroves creaked at odd hours. The fish stopped swimming near the village. And once, during twilight, that night, Enzo sat beneath the stars and meditated for the first time, using the rites in the scroll. His hands lit with that faint golden fire, steady now, no longer burning, more like a heartbeat. He whispered the ancient prayer: "I am not light. I am not shadow. I am the breath between the two. I am Bantas, keeper, witness." Blade suddenly, a voice echoed through the trees, neither male nor female. "The gatekeeper sleeps beneath the sea. The storm-blooded rise with the tide. Will you face them, Enzo of Dalasay?" He opened his eyes, and in the reflection of the river, he saw something coming. Massive, scaled, eyes like lanterns, and behind it, a woman with salt in her hair and fire in her mouth. Another divine, another claimant. Enzo had never felt the weight of silence as he did now. The river, once calm, churned violently beneath him, like a beast awakening from its slumber. His pulse quickened, and his breath caught in the air as he stood at the edge of the water, staring into the reflection that held the terror of his visions. He saw her, the Salt Queen. Her form rose from the depths, towering and serpentine. Her skin shimmered like wet stone, eyes glinting with an eerie blue fire. Long tresses of seaweed-like hair hung around her face, concealing her features. But her mouth blazed with fire. Her presence was both ancient and terrifying, a reminder of the old ways and the forgotten horrors of the seas. The Salt Queen, one of the oldest beings in the world, had emerged. Enzo's heart raced, his mind spinning. The divine beings he had already faced were only the tip of the iceberg. The Aswang, the forgotten ones, the creatures that roamed the night. They were only fragments of the storm that was now beginning to gather strength. "You dare to challenge the tide?" Her voice echoed, deep and booming, like the call of the ocean itself. "You, who think you can balance this broken world? The sea will rise, and with it, all will be consumed." The water around Enzo's feet began to swell, and he stumbled backward, unsure whether to run or to fight. The Salt Queen's arrival meant something more than just a threat. It was a promise. The balance had shifted too far, and now the sea was ready to reclaim what it had lost. But there was no running. Not anymore. The answer of the river Malloy arrived just in time, shouting from the shore. He had heard the roar of the river and sensed something was wrong. "Enzo, you can't fight her with fire alone. The sea has its own laws, its own balance. It's not like the Aswang or anything you've faced before." Enzo's eyes flicked to his old friend, desperation in his gaze. He was supposed to be the keeper of balance, wasn't he? But how could he balance against an ancient force of nature like this? What was there to do when the seas themselves rose against him? The Salt Queen's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You are nothing but a boy in a world of storms," she whispered, the wind carrying her voice over the water. Then, something within Enzo snapped. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the teachings of the scroll, the ancient covenant. The true balance was not in being the force that controlled nature, but in understanding it, in accepting the duality of life and death, fire and water, shadow and light. With a strength that surprised even him, he reached into his core, summoning the powers of both the land and the sea. His fingers lit with the golden fire of Bantas, and the earth itself began to rumble beneath his feet, as if recognizing his awakening. The Salt Queen froze, her eyes narrowing. She could feel it, the power of the old gods, the very heartbeat of the world flowing through him. She understood what he was doing. "You cannot tame me, mortal," she hissed, "but you may learn the cost of defying the tides." The tide rose higher, the water now lapping at Enzo's ankles, his knees, and then his waist. But Enzo was no longer afraid. He had faced the fire of the Aswang, the darkness of the unknown, and now he would face the ocean itself. The Salt Queen's form began to distort, bending like waves crashing in a storm, her fire-wreathed mouth widening as she reached for Enzo. Her power was palpable, raw, unyielding, and eternal. But Enzo, drawing deep from the well of his newfound powers, found strength in the storm, too. He wasn't trying to fight her. He was trying to understand her. "I don't control the balance, Queen of Salt. I am its keeper, and you are not the storm. You are a part of it. You have always been." Her eyes widened, disbelief flickering through her fiery gaze. The battle of wills intensified. "You think you can stop me? You who have not yet learned what you are?" Enzo's voice was calm, as if the truth had finally dawned on him. "I have learned enough. You cannot defeat the tide by fighting it. You must flow with it." And with that, the winds howled and the sea recoiled as if the storm itself had been quelled. The heart of darkness. But as the Salt Queen shrieked in fury, Enzo's inner turmoil flared. A shadow moved in the periphery, dark and twisting, the very darkness that Enzo had ignored until now. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a silhouette cloaked in shadow. a being neither man nor monster, but something that had been there all along, watching. Enzo's breath caught in his throat. It was the figure from his dream, the one that had appeared in his visions, the keeper of shadows. It was neither light nor dark, neither man nor God. It was the very embodiment of chaos, the force that moved between worlds, a bridge between the known and the unknown. And it was watching him with cold, hollow eyes. You think you can balance these worlds, Enzo? You who have not yet faced what truly lies beneath? The shadow spoke in a voice that was both familiar and terrifying. Enzo took a step back. What was this? A final choice. You must choose. The shadow continued. Not between fire and water, not between the Salt Queen and the Aswang, but between light and shadow. You cannot be both. A wave of pressure crashed into him. The Salt Queen's raging power, the shadow's dark promise, the pull of both worlds, both destinies. Enzo felt the weight of his role pressing down on him. What am I supposed to choose? Enzo asked, his voice trembling for the first time. The shadow did not answer immediately. Instead, it whispered, "Balance is not found by choosing one side, but by standing between them. But only you can hold that weight." Enzo's chest tightened as the two powers swirled around him. The choice was his. Would he embrace the fiery rage of the Aswang, the ancient fight of the gods, or would he bow to the ocean's cold embrace, to the wisdom of the Salt Queen? Or perhaps, would he forge his own path, walking in the darkness between the two? Enzo stood at the edge of the abyss, the churning river beneath his feet now still, as if it too were holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. The Salt Queen's fire still burned in the air, her presence towering over him like a tempest, while the shadow that had once been a whisper now loomed large, darkening the sky. The worlds of the divine and the monstrous were colliding, and the weight of his choice felt heavier than anything he had ever known. His heart pounded in his chest as the final choice loomed before him. The shadow's whisper. The keeper of shadows moved closer, its form flickering in and out of existence. Its voice, deep and unnerving, curled around him like smoke. You think you can stand between these forces, Enzo? The Salt Queen, the Aswang, the elements of fire and water, they are beyond you. You are only human. You cannot hold them back. The balance you seek is an illusion. Enzo's gaze flicked to the Salt Queen. She stood like a mountain of ice and flame, her body flickering between solid and vapor. Her eyes glowed with ancient power. "The world will drown, Enzo," she crooned, her voice both tender and venomous. "The tides will rise, and nothing will remain but salt and ash. You cannot stop me. This is my domain, and you are nothing but a fleeting moment in its eternal cycle." Enzo closed his eyes, trying to center himself. He knew that his strength alone wouldn't be enough. He had always thought of himself as the keeper of balance. But what did that even mean? He could not choose one side over the other. He couldn't stand for just the fire or just the water. They were both necessary. They both belonged. The truth of balance. For a moment, it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Then, something shifted within Enzo. He wasn't merely a man caught between worlds. He was a bridge. He had been chosen, not because of his ability to control the forces around him, but because of his capacity to understand them. The Salt Queen was right. The world would drown in the tides, but it would not be because of her. It would be because of the imbalance, the refusal to see the world for what it truly was. A dance between chaos and order, light and shadow, fire and water. Enzo opened his eyes and stood taller, letting the winds carry his words to the heavens and the earth below. "You are both right," he said, his voice carrying the weight of the universe. "But I am not here to stop you, Salt Queen. I am here to remind you that you are not alone in this world. The fire, the earth, the air, they all play their part, and so do I. I do not control the balance. I serve it." The river began to ripple beneath him, the tension in the air vibrating with the pull of his words. He was no longer a mere man caught between worlds. He was a manifestation of balance itself, the thread that tied everything together. "You are right, Keeper of Shadows," Enzo continued, his eyes locked onto the shadow's form. "Balance does not come from choosing one side over the other. It comes from embracing the darkness and the light together. Without one, the other cannot exist." The final convergence. A silence stretched across the world. The Salt Queen faltered, her fire dimming, her form wavering like a fading star. The shadow, too, seemed to shrink, as if it had no power when confronted with the truth that Enzo had discovered. The forces around him trembled, as if the world itself was reconsidering the path it had taken. The storm began to slow, the winds subsiding, and the water calmed, its churning rage now a soft lullaby. It was not a defeat, it was an understanding. "So this is how it is to be," the Salt Queen murmured, her voice no longer full of wrath, but tinged with resignation. "You are a bridge, Enzo, a keeper of what is neither fire nor water. You are what binds us all." The Keeper of Shadows stepped back into the darkness from which it had emerged, its form dissolving into the very air itself. Its voice, now a whisper on the wind, echoed softly. "Balance is not about control. It is about understanding." With that, the shadow was gone, leaving only the stillness of the river in its wake. A new dawn. The world had changed. The skies above, once swirling with the fury of the elements, now cleared. The sun began to rise over the horizon, its golden light spilling over the land, illuminating the path before Enzo. The forces of fire, water, shadow, and light had settled into their rightful places. But Enzo was not finished. His journey had only just begun. "There will always be storms," he whispered to the river, his voice filled with both certainty and humility. "But as long as I am here, I will carry the balance." And with that, he turned and walked forward, his path uncertain, but his purpose clear. The world was vast and full of mysteries, some dark, some light, but he would face them all as the keeper of balance. The storm had passed, the balance had been restored, and Enzo had become more than just a man. He had become the bridge between worlds, the eternal guardian of the balance that held everything together.